Anxiety is all completely relative to the individual. I like to think of it as though it's like on a spectrum. Recently, I was speaking to my grandfather who used to get the train up into London for work every single day. It was an hour-long train, and he always did it without a second thought. It's something he had to do. He had to go up into the city to work. That was his job. And of course, you have like the odd day where like the train gets cancelled, or there's some like other circumstance that means he couldn't get the train or whatever. We can forget about that. He always did that without fail. And recently he hasn't been up into the city for years now at this point. He's been retired for about 5 years, I want to say. And even since COVID, he hasn't been into the city at all. So he hasn't got a train at all. And some of his old work friends asked him if he wanted to go and meet them up there, which obviously means he's going to have to go and get a train. And he was telling me how nervous he was to go and get on the train, and he had this like built up anxiety in him, and he couldn't shake it for some reason. He was just so confused why he felt this way, because he had obviously got the train up into the city for almost 50 years straight. So why now all of a sudden has he got this anxiety about getting a train? Like, it's such a small little thing, but he feels such a strong way about it. And I stopped for a minute just to think about it, and the sort of conclusion I've come to is it's his anxiety now is about completely different things to what he might have had anxiety about 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. As we get older, as we develop, as we grow, as we mature, as we gain new experiences, as our lives change, as we get different jobs, as we have children, and we change as individuals. The things we worry about, the things we get anxiety for or get anxiety over, change with them. And because while he was working and getting the train up into the city every day, the train was just something he had to do to get to where he wanted. So he didn't have to think twice about getting the train, because he just had to do it. His anxiety was focused on the work he was doing and the family he has at home that he needed to look after and he had to provide for. That's where his anxiety was. But as he's got older and as he's now retired, his children has moved out and his kids now have kids, being me, his priorities have shifted. He hasn't got to worry about the work he's got to do up in town. He's got different worries. And being retired, he doesn't, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, he has a very simple life. He plays golf, he goes out for lunch with his friends. He doesn't have like these necessarily super complex events occurring in his life that potentially cause anxiety. And thus he's now getting anxiety over the smaller things, like the pot of coleslaw in the fridge going out of date, or they're getting a train up into town, or making sure there's enough food in the fridge. And just those sorts of things, as you're as your mind is focused on a bigger goal, a bigger target, a bigger objective, those sorts of things, they don't even cross your mind. They're not even something you have a second thought about. So there's no reason to have anxiety and worry about them. And it's just made me think that we always need a goal. We always need something to keep us on track. Always something to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I don't think it's particularly healthy to have anxiety over these smaller things. And I would be super interested to do some sort of investigative work into finding out how like what elderly people do and get up to during their retirement, because I would almost guarantee the people who have a goal and the people who are perhaps still working, like maybe not even retired, so like people who are like over 70 who still work and still have like a deep passion for work, or just someone who has like a deeply rooted goal that they're still trying to work for. I imagine they have much more anxiety over that than anxiety over something much smaller, like getting a train. Not to say that getting a train is something you shouldn't have anxiety over. If that's what you worry about, if that's what you have anxiety over, that's okay. We all have our own worries. And it's just made me think that we are literally almost built to just worry about things, which sounds kind of crazy, but everyone has something they worry about. Everyone has something they have a little bit of anxiety over. And there was another instance a couple of weeks ago where I was at a family event, and I don't know what relation they had to me, to be honest. A cousin of some sort, maybe, or like one of my mum's cousins. They have kids, and they were, and she was complaining that her kids were worried about what sort of color ballet shoes or something they're gonna buy, and like her kids were very like distressed about it, and that in turn made her feel very distressed. And I just said to her, like, I didn't even think about it at the time, and it might have come across quite rude, but I think I just said something like, damn, is that all they have to worry about? And she kind of stopped for a minute and kind of went, huh, like, yeah, that is quite a small, insignificant thing to worry about. And yeah, it's just made me realize that we all have our own worries, and it's okay to have worries. It's okay to have a little bit of anxiety. And I think that's almost what keeps us on our toes a little bit. And I've coined this, I don't know if it's a thing, I don't know if I read it somewhere or it's just something I came up with myself. But I've coined it relative anxiety. We all have anxiety relative to our own lives, to each other. And that's okay. I think that's almost what keeps us on track. That's what keeps us going to some extent. And I've found in my own life, the things I'm most anxious about, the things that perhaps like you don't want to do, the things that you're putting off in your life, the things that you worry about, are 9 times out of 10 the best things to do, because your reward system internally gets massaged incredibly when you do those things that you don't necessarily want to do, or the things that you think you don't want to do. And in my grandfather's case and granddad's case, him getting on that train up into London, okay, he's having this crazy anxiety over it. when he gets on that train and he gets up into London and he's then with all of his friends having a good time, his reward system's gonna go crazy. His endorphins, his energy, his mood is gonna be incredible. He'll enjoy himself, but he has to get over that little bit of anxiety in order to get to that point. And I've now in my own life, now I've come to this conclusion. I almost want, I crave that anxiety. I want that anxiety because I know once I get past it, the reward on the other side is going to be incredible.